I thought it would be useful for everyone to have some guidelines as to what to look for in a spiritual tradition when evaluating, is it good, is it bad, is it indifferent, is it malicious, is it something extremely good that you should jump into immediately? So when I was first getting into this, I very much wished I had someone to tell me, hey, this is what to look for. This is the hard questions you need to ask the people who are practicing the tradition. So I thought I'd correct that mistake and suggest this for you. You can ask this to practitioners here, or you can ask it to practitioners of all kinds of spiritual traditions that you might investigate in the future. So, my story. Way back in the year 2000, I was studying in the University of Southampton. And while there, I came across a Krishna Consciousness University Club. I really got into the meditation. I thought the meditation was amazing, the best thing I've ever had. I was like, oh, this stuff actually works. I thought meditation was just people confusing themselves, but no, this is really good. And food was amazing too, even though it was really simple. I couldn't understand it. And the teachings, they seemed to make sense. And the people, I like the people. They seem smart and happy. But so I Googled everything I could find. Oh, well, yes, was Google around? I think Google had just come out at that time. Yeah, imagine that, world without Google. So I tried to find everything I could find about it and found a couple of haters on the internet who were like, hey, this obscure thing about the Krishna consciousness is terrible. And I was like, basically, okay, there's a couple of haters, but for the most part, it's okay from what I could find. But like I said, I wished someone would have sat me down and said, you should ask these questions to really make sure. So, I dug up some pictures from the time. Here's a picture of the group of people who I was hanging out with. That's from the left, Rhiannon, Faz, Joe, and I forget the guy on the right's name. Only Rhiannon on the left carried on practicing Krishna consciousness. Everyone else went on separate paths. Oh yeah, and there's me. I used to be cool. So, why follow a tradition at all? Why not invent your own spiritual system from bits and pieces that you gather from everything that you learn? Well, why study medicine at all? Why not invent your own medicine out of bits and pieces that you learn? Anyone want to do that? Anyone want to see a doctor who says, I just learned something from some shaman and then learned something from some voodoo priest that I studied under, and here I am. I'm gonna be your brain surgeon for today. Would you go to such a doctor? No, of course not. But some doctors do invent a new system of medicine out of things they learned from other areas. Like, has anyone heard of John Snow, who pretty much invented the system of epidemiology in 1850, when cholera was killing half the population of London, basically. And he by basically inventing epidemiology, where disease comes from, managed to, due to his research, we now know not to put sewage in drinking water. Yeah, imagine that. But people didn't realize, and therefore, things like cholera don't exist anymore in the modern world. So yeah, don't invent your own system of medicine, and it's generally also the same. Don't invent your own spiritual tradition, unless you're one of the rare special people. But chances are, I'm not, I can tell you that. But so chances are, every one of you, of course one of you might be, but most of you aren't, sorry. And so yeah, why investigate and evaluate? Okay, so suppose you're following it. You want to follow a tradition. You want to follow something. So why investigate and evaluate it? Why not just assume that every path leads to the same goal and there is no difference to what you follow? Just pick one and everything will manifest from the universe. Why not that? Well, here's a humorous example as to why not. So yes, all paths don't necessarily lead to the same goal. No, some paths lead opposite to the goal. Some paths lead perpendicular to the goal, and some paths lead in a circle, going nowhere, and some paths lead to lead straight up instead of going to the goal. So yeah. So then, coming into the heart of the presentation, breaking it down into 4 areas to ask questions about. The philosophy of the tradition, looking at what the people do, looking at the tradition itself, and looking at the process that they follow, if at all. Sound good? Let's get into each one. Oh yes, and most importantly, the top one, question. Question all of these things, and being able to, being encouraged to and able to ask lots of questions is really important. If you happen across a tradition and they say, no, don't ask these questions, everything will be revealed in time by the universe. You're like, no, no, you need to ask the questions, otherwise how do you learn anything? So, the philosophy. Does the philosophy make sense? Is it internally consistent? Is it full of contradictions? Can the members of the tradition actually explain the philosophy in a way that makes sense? Or is it all just kind of a mumbo-jumbo jumble of spiritual sounding terms? Like this. Sound spiritual? Life is nothing short of a maturing explosion of infinite synchronicity. Here's where I got it from. Yes. So, if you hear stuff like that, and it doesn't make any sense, chances are it's because it doesn't make any sense. And just because something sounds spiritual doesn't mean it actually is. So don't fall for that. So, some good questions to actually ask. Let's start with, who are you? What makes up you? What is the thing that is you? Now I can start answering these from a Krishna conscious perspective. And I don't really want to get into other traditions because I haven't studied them in depth. If you're interested in some other traditions, ask these questions yourself. But I'll answer them from the Krishna conscious point of view, where, who are you? You are your consciousness, the spirit soul riding a machine known as the material body and mind. And happy to go into much more depth with all of these over dinner, or with whoever you talk to over dinner, because I'm sure any of our practitioners here will be able to answer these questions. But if you're interested, if it sparks your interest, do ask in more detail. Next question. Explain the universe. What's the universe? How did it come about? Where's it going? What's it made out of? Who lives there? And brief answer. The universe is real, but not permanent. It is a temporary manifestation of material matter. And a quote from Bhagavad Gita that exemplifies this is, this material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and unmoving beings, and under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So the universe is created, destroyed continually over trillions of years. Therefore, it's temporary, but it exists as a real physical thing, though it isn't conscious in itself, as we are. And then, who's the supreme? Is it Jim Carrey? No. From a Krishna conscious point of view, Krishna is the supreme. Krishna is the supreme because he's the most attractive living being in the universe and outside the universe. So the most attractive thing, by connecting to that most attractive spiritual thing, you yourself can achieve unlimited happiness. By stronger that connection is, the more unconditional happiness results. And you can test it too, because try a little bit of the process, and if some unconditional happiness happens upon you, then maybe there's something to it. By unconditional happiness, by the way, because it's a little bit of a strange term, I mean happiness that's not bound to, oh, this good thing happened to me. It's happiness that's there for no reason, apparently. Okay, next. Why do bad things happen to good people, and inversely, why do good things happen to bad people? The question that you should ask, which some spiritual traditions really struggle with. Not this one. And the basic premise of the argument is, so why do bad things happen to good people? Suppose God is good. Let's actually, I have things in the wrong order. Suppose God is all good and all powerful. Why does he or she let bad things happen to people all over the world who are generally good and innocent? Either God must be cruel and evil and powerful, so God could prevent all the bad things happening, but God is a sadist who enjoys torturing people. Or the situation is that God is all good but powerless. So God would very much like to help everyone, but can't do anything about it. That's the basic dilemma of the question, and the Krishna conscious answer is bad things happening to good people, and briefly, of course, because I could talk for an hour about this, but basically, the bad things happening to people is an illusion because the person is not the body. The person is so very much like if you're playing a computer game and something bad happens to your character in the game, that bad thing is not happening to you. Therefore, that bad thing isn't actually so bad. And the bad reaction, and as soon as you realize that, all bad things in your life go away because, hey, it's not me, it doesn't really matter. And therefore you achieve the unconditional happiness thing again. But why the bad things happen? It's a reaction to karma, to previous life, to learn a lesson. Very briefly. Next, what exactly happens at death? And I mean exactly, in intricate detail. Well, the soul leaves the body and reincarnates into a different body, as explained in the all-knowing spiritual book, Bhagavad Gita, where all of this stuff is explained in clear language. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits this body, O son of Kunti, that state, he will attain without fail. So whatever your consciousness is at a time of death, that results in the state of the new body. Someone that's really vicious and likes to tear into meat, they can become a tiger and live that to their fullest. Someone that doesn't want to move at all and just wants to sleep can become a tree in their next life. But most people become humans in their next life again. But your particular type of human, the country, the planet, that is determined by one's consciousness. Should I keep going? This is kind of rapid fire, but sure. How can free will exist in a deterministic world? So, all these big questions most people don't even think about, but I'd like to go into them here. So the world is deterministic in that everything happens as a result of the laws of nature manifesting. Everything is like a chain reaction executing. So if everything is a chain reaction, how can there be any free will? How is not everything you do in your life completely predetermined? Well, the answer is that the non-physical consciousness is outside of the material world and influences by desire. So you as the soul, you as the conscious soul can desire things, going, I want this. And that influences the mind, which is material, to start planning to how to fulfill that desire. And then because the mind has made a plan, the body executes the plan and tries to achieve whatever the consciousness has desired. Therefore, things happen in the world. Someone goes, I desire to create a nuclear weapon, and whole history changes as a result of that. So it's the material, the non-material, the spiritual consciousness projecting its desires onto the material mind. That creates free will in the world. And finally, what's the meaning of life? Why are we here? What are we doing? Quite simply, from the Krishna conscious point of view, the point here is to live out whatever we want to do. And process of reincarnation is, what would you call it? It's given to us as an avenue to fulfill our desires. But from a Krishna conscious point of view, what you really want to do is to reconnect yourself to Krishna and achieve this non-material, unconditional happiness thing, and therefore stop the cycle of reincarnation and become being a pure spiritual consciousness. But if you don't want to do that, go ahead, no problem. How's that for a lightning tour of philosophy? Blowing everyone's mind too much philosophy all at once? Let's move on to something a little bit more easy to relate to. The people. So, are the people true to their original teachings? Do they practice what they teach? And do they teach what it actually says in their book? And do they understand what it actually says in their book? I assume some people here are from a Christian background. Anyone know what this in the original language of the Bible says in Hebrew? No one. I didn't know this either. They don't really teach this in Christianity. It says this: in the beginning, created God the heaven and the earth. It's the very beginning of the Bible, the first words. So, any aspiring Christians should be embarrassed, but not really actually embarrassed, because it's not something that's emphasized in the teaching, though I think it should be. Here's an example of something from the Bhagavad Gita, our spiritual book, to show off a little bit. I will pick someone out of the audience who's not me, because I put this presentation together, I should know what it says, but any volunteers into what this means? Dihinos min yathadehe kumaram yovanam java tata dehan data paptya diras tatra namuyati. What could that possibly mean in 5,000-year-old language that no one speaks anymore? Who knows? Raise your hand if you know what this means.
It means like the body passes from childhood to youth to old age.
Yeah, something like that. Can anyone quote exactly? Come on, don't be shy. Oh yeah, okay, go ahead.
The body soul continues to pass in this body from boyhood to youth to old age. So the soul similarly passes into another body, and so goes into another person.
Very good. Okay, that was a fluke. Next one. Tadvidi paripatina pariprasnena sevaya upatekshanti tejanam janinas tatvadashinaha. What does that mean? Bunch of mumbo jumbo. What was that? Is that a language or anyone? Someone different? Come on. Are you going to embarrass me here? Everyone knows what this means. Yes?
Just try to acquire the truth by approaching a spiritual master, render service unto him submissively, and inquire. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth.
Yes. Very good. Thank you. Yeah, so all the verses picked from the Bhagavad Gita. So, yeah. Everyone has a shy. I'm sure you know this is. Next question you should ask the people, or observe from the people. Do the people actually care for each other? Where's Benita? Yes. Do the people care for each other? Our receptionist. Thoroughly embarrassing. Yes. And are the people happy? Anyone met Kela Tirtha here? Yes. Are the people genuinely happy with what they are? If everyone's miserable in the tradition that you're looking at, then why would you possibly want to follow it? So, some basic things to look at the people. Do they follow what they teach? And do they know what they teach? Are they happy? Or do they care for each other? And the caring for each other is actually quite a hard thing, because having, not just following your own program, but genuinely caring for the well-being of other people is really important in maintaining a spiritual tradition and making it a nice place for everyone involved. So, the tradition itself, part 3 of our presentation here. Tradition itself, the thing that makes up the spiritual path. Let's go into some questions to ask about that. So, first question: how old is the tradition? Was it invented by some guy 15 years ago, or is it thousands of years old and has a long chain of spiritual tradition practitioners who've successfully gotten some value out of it? Here is a timeline of spiritual traditions, or so-called spiritual traditions. Wonder if I can put my laser pointer here. No, I'll use this one. So yeah, starting with L. Ron Hubbard founding Scientology in 1955. Don't get into Scientology if you ever get approached. And Henry VIII founds the Church of England. With this one, Martin Luther founds Protestantism in 1520. Then going further back, Pope Gregory founds Catholicism, quite a while after Jesus' birth, actually. Muhammad founds Islam, birth of Jesus. Buddha founds Buddhism. Lao Tzu founds Taoism, and Mahavira founds Jainism, all around the same time. And Moses founds Judaism around there, although the date is a bit sketchy, depending on depending on which history you're looking at. So, where I didn't put Krishna Consciousness anywhere here, and I blank out the picture. There we go, by hitting the wrong button. So, where does Krishna Consciousness fit? Well, let's slide this back a bit. Here we get, what's that? Other Buddhists. There were a whole bunch of different Buddhists. So here is the, I can't read, my head is, here is the period of the Mahabharata, about 3,500 years ago. This is the events of Bhagavad Gita happening. And if we go further back, the origin of the Vedic civilization is around 9,000 years back. And Rig Veda, the original Vedas, written down around sometime between 7,000 years ago. So the books that we study, basically something around 5,000 to 6,000 years old. All right, next question. Is there a disciplic succession? So, assuming the tradition is old and has some historic depth to it, is there a unbroken succession of teachers that have taught disciples who have tried their best to keep the tradition accurate and in line with what their teacher has taught them? And if there isn't a chain of teachers, then chances are someone has, throughout history, taken something and twisted it to suit their own agenda. So you want to avoid that as much as possible, and having a disciplic succession chain helps preserve the purity of the tradition. So here's some snapshots out of the Krishna conscious disciplic succession that you'll find at the start of Bhagavad Gita. There's the full list, but there's Krishna, Brahma, Narada Muni, Madhvacharya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gaurkishwadas Babaji, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, of course. And then Devamrita Swami is the disciple of Prabhupada, who's my spiritual master, and here I am, trying my best to explain what has been explained to me as accurately and undistortedly as I possibly can. So after confirming that there is a disciplic succession and we're not distorting the teachings, or trying our best very much to not distort the teachings, next question to ask about the tradition is, how's the food? Because chances are you're going to be eating it, so it might as well be good, right? and actually, more importantly, in the Krishna consciousness, we learn that the consciousness of the cooker, the people that cook the food, affects the consumer of the food. And so if people are of high spiritual consciousness while preparing the food, the people that eat the food their spiritual consciousness gets elevated as well. And you can feel it. Anyone that has a little bit of sensitivity to spiritual or to consciousness in general, to the state of consciousness upon material matter. So food is just matter in the world, but consciousness can project its state upon that matter. And if you have a little bit of sensitivity towards that, you can definitely tell that something strange about this food, in a good way. Yes, it's been cooked with high consciousness and offered to Krishna. So let's look at the process itself. What is the process that is being taught? Is there a process, first of all, is the first question. Do you just show up and believe? Or is there a spiritual process? Is it like going to the gym, where you do something and get a result? If there's no process, then how are you going to achieve any result? There has to be something that you do, otherwise everyone would automatically be highly elevated spiritual person, and most people aren't. So what do you do? Well, first thing, before you get into what you do, some preliminary things to evaluate if it's a worthwhile process to go. What happens to the unsuccessful practitioners of the process? You don't want to spend 30 years of your life following something and failing for whatever reason, and then you decide, not for me, I'll go on and do something else, which you're very welcome to do. Some people do that, and it's not like we pursue them or anything. It's your own life. You can lead it as however you like. And actually, in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked this very question. He's like, does not a person who abandons this spiritual process perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere? So they don't have a material life, they don't have a spiritual life. They're just torn apart like a cloud. Isn't that the case? And Krishna reassures him, saying, no. After the unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment in the planets of pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. Or he takes birth in the family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Verily, such a birth is rare in this world. On taking such a birth, they are again revive their divine consciousness of their previous life and try to make further progress from there. So basically, everything that you gain in this life in terms of spiritual progress, you retain and can carry on in your future life. And you tend to get a favorable material circumstance for that. It's very hard to practice spiritual life if you're just struggling just to survive in a third world country, for example. So as part of a reward for your spiritual life and as part of a just practical consideration to carry on spiritual endeavors, most spiritualists get reborn into a circumstance that makes it relatively easy to follow that. So unsuccessful spiritualists can carry on where they left off in the next life, or even in this life. You can take a break and resume as you like. Okay. Next question to ask is, how much money are they going to take out of my pocket to follow this so-called spiritual thing? I looked up how much it costs to become operating thetan, was a kind of high-level Scientologist term, around $380,000 New Zealand dollars to pass all their exams and take all the courses. So, if you're getting into Scientology, and again, it will cost you a huge amount of money. But suppose you want to join this, what do you call it? Cult known as Western Science. Very dangerous, I've heard. That'll take a lot of money out of your pocket. Suppose you wanted to go through university and do a PhD in something like artificial intelligence, like a crazy person, like the person who's speaking to you now. How much money would that cost you? And I'm not talking about the government subsidized money, because half the money or most of the money that the university makes comes from government, comes from taxes. So I'm talking about the actual amount of money that it costs to go through that kind of education. Anyone hazard a guess? These are foreign student fees, which highlight the actual amount of money, how much it costs. Of course, if you're a New Zealand citizen or resident, it's a lot cheaper. And where I studied in the UK, a similar amount of money. I got a scholarship, so I didn't actually pay all of that. But yeah, University of Auckland, only slightly cheaper than Scientology. And of course, Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna mantra is free. Japa beads. Where did I put mine? Japa beads pretty cheap. These things that you chant with. So you're chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram, Hare Hare, and so on. Bhagavad Gita, pretty cheap. And Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, which are graduate study. Did I get those prices right? I took these from a while ago.
It's cheaper now.
Cheaper. We're going down in price. What's happening?
It's like 150 off.
Oh, bargain.
Because you'd be getting them today.
So yeah, not much money at all. And after reading all of these books, it'll take you some time, because it's like altogether 30 books. But after reading these books, you can become a Brahmana, which is like, as any of you from India know, the caste system of Sudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmana. Brahmana being the highest caste. If you actually read what it says in the book, castes are by qualification, not by birth. And everyone in India has forgotten that. But you can point them at the verse. It says here, black and white, in your own spiritual book. See what I was saying about following your own spiritual tradition. But because it's by qualification, anyone here can become a Brahmana, can become the highest caste in India, and you can get the thing, the thread that shows you're a Brahmana and know something about spiritual knowledge, and therefore, and it doesn't cost much money, just a little bit of investment in time and interest, and in wanting to become that. So much cheaper than this cult known as university. Not that university is a bad thing, of course. I recommend university and have done a lot of university in my own life. Next question to ask of the process. Is there a process for scientifically verifying the knowledge? Is it just here's the knowledge, believe it or not? Or is there something that you, here we're getting into the actual process, is there something that you can do to scientifically, meaning observe something and set up a hypothesis and observe if you achieve the result? Don't just believe because the book says so. Can you test? Can you do a test that the knowledge is correct? Well, answer to that, there is the, very briefly, because again I could go on for hours, there is the Bhakti Yoga process, which is Smaranam Kirtanam, Shravanam Kirtanam, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Shakyam Atmanivenanam. Again, all in Srimad Bhagavatam in all the detail you ever want, which is hearing, meaning listening to things like this, to talks like this, and hearing your own voice as you're doing the meditation, and chanting, doing the meditation itself, which is either silently or very quietly chanting on the beads, or very loudly singing and chanting in kirtan, as we'll be doing very soon. Remembering, trying to remember, serving, doing the what we call bhakti yoga or devotional service, meaning doing things not for your own selfish motivation, but doing service to other people, other practitioners, and ultimately doing service for Krishna's benefit, which then automatically benefits everyone else. Worshipping, praying, and then we get into esoteric things that make a lot of sense once you start reading the books. Becoming a servant, becoming a best friend, what does that mean? Yes, I can explain it to you, but it'll take me quite a while to give you the full picture. So trust me on those. And then full spiritual consciousness by surrendering your own your concept of I am this material body, I am this material mind, achieving a full spiritual realization. And indeed, if you look at Bhagavad Gita, which summarizes the spiritual knowledge, we get this explanation of the process. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. So yes, because it just gives this direct perception of the self by realization, that's what makes it so amazing. So yeah, what is the process of getting this direct perception of the self? Basically, comes down to this chanting, these simple wooden beads, which you chant on. I invite everyone to try. It's pretty cheap comparatively, and I found back in the year 2000 that I was blown away that I got a glimpse of this unconditional happiness that's not bound to good things happening in my life, which I got a glimpse of it, and as I'm practicing my whole life since then, I've gotten more glimpses, shall we say. And that's created a bit of faith, I'd say, though I'd probably hesitate to use that word exactly and more call it a bit of realization that, yes, maybe there is something to this Krishna consciousness. And maybe I just want to carry on practicing a little bit in my life. And I recommend it to other people, but really, everyone can lead their own life. Do as you like. It's a great process that works really well for me and works well for most people also. So, questions are very welcome in this Krishna consciousness. Any questions?